In the late 1970s, the quiet town of Circleville, Ohio, became the stage for a chilling mystery, a mystery that would span decades and leave an indelible mark on the community. Anonymous letters began flooding the town, exposing secrets, accusing residents of infidelity, and threatening violence. These letters were not just idle threats, they were deeply personal, revealing intimate details about the lives of the recipients. Over 2 decades, these letters terrorized the community, leading to a suspicious death, a botched trial, and questions that remain unanswered to this day. The letters were a constant reminder that someone was always watching, always judging. Who wrote the Circleville Letters, and why? These questions have haunted the residents of Circleville for years, creating an atmosphere of fear and suspicion. Today, we're diving into one of the most bizarre and unsettling unsolved mysteries in American history. A story that has baffled investigators and intrigued true crime enthusiasts alike. Our story begins in 1976, when Circleville resident Mary Gillespie, a school bus driver, received an anonymous letter accusing her of having an affair with the local school superintendent, Gordon Massey. The letter was explicit and threatening, leaving Mary in a state of shock. The letter warned her to stop or face public humiliation. The message was clear. "I know where you live. I've been watching your house. This is no joke." The writer seemed to have an intimate knowledge of Mary's life, making the threat all the more terrifying. "I know where you live. I've been watching your house. This is no joke." The sense of being constantly watched was unnerving, and Mary couldn't shake the feeling of dread that followed her everywhere. At first, Mary brushed off the letter, assuming it was a cruel prank. She tried to go about her daily life, but the letters kept coming, each one more threatening than the last. But more letters arrived, targeting not just Mary, but her husband Ron as well. The letters accused Ron of various misdeeds and threatened to expose him to the community. The writers seemed to know intimate details about their lives, details no outsider should have known. This level of knowledge suggested that the writer was someone close to them, someone who had access to their private lives. It wasn't long before the letters began spreading to other residents in Circleville, revealing secrets and leveling accusations. The entire town was soon engulfed in a wave of fear and paranoia. A wave of fear and paranoia gripped the community. People began to suspect their neighbors, friends, and even family members. Trust was eroded, and the once tight-knit community was torn apart. But this was only the beginning. The letters continued to arrive, each one more menacing than the last. The town was on edge, and everyone was looking over their shoulder. On August 19, 1977, Mary's husband Ron received a disturbing phone call. The call was brief, but it was enough to send Ron into a rage. It's believed the call was from the letter writer. The voice on the other end was calm and menacing, taunting Ron and pushing him to the brink. Furious, Ron grabbed his gun and stormed out of the house, determined to confront whoever was behind the threats. He was a man on a mission, driven by anger and fear. But later that night, Ron's car crashed into a tree, killing him instantly. The crash was sudden and violent, leaving the community in shock. Strangely, Ron's gun had been fired once, though no one knows at what or why. The mystery deepened, and questions about the true cause of the crash began to surface. His death was ruled an accident, attributed to drunk driving, but his family wasn't convinced. They believed there was more to the story, and they were determined to find out the truth. They claimed Ron rarely drank, let alone to the extent recorded in the toxicology report. The inconsistencies in the report only fueled their suspicions. Was this really a tragic accident, or did the letter writer have something to do with Ron's death? The family's search for answers led them down a dark and twisted path. The writer certainly thought so. They claimed responsibility in one of their chilling letters. The letter was a taunt, a cruel reminder that the writer was still out there watching and waiting. Years later, the situation escalated when Mary discovered threatening signs posted along her school bus route. The signs were a new level of threat designed to instill fear and panic. One day in 1983, she decided to remove one of the signs, but what she found was shocking. The sign was rigged with a booby trap. The discovery was a turning point in the case, revealing the lengths to which the writer would go to terrorize Mary. The sign was rigged with a booby trap. The trap was a sophisticated device designed to cause serious harm. Inside was a box containing a loaded gun, set to fire when tampered with. Thankfully, Mary wasn't harmed. The discovery of the booby trap added a new layer of danger to the mystery. The gun was traced back to her brother-in-law, Paul Freshour. The connection to Paul was a shocking twist, raising questions about his involvement in the letters. Paul denied any involvement, but investigators found his handwriting suspiciously similar to that on the letters. The handwriting analysis was a key piece of evidence, but it was not conclusive. In 1983, Paul was arrested and later convicted for attempting to murder Mary, even though the evidence tying him to the booby trap was largely circumstantial. The trial was a media sensation, drawing attention from across the country. Authorities believed Paul was also the Circleville letter writer. His conviction was seen as a victory, but it did little to ease the fears of the community. But the letters didn't stop after his imprisonment. In fact, they continued, even taunting the prison warden, claiming the wrong person had been convicted. The continuation of the letters cast doubt on Paul's guilt and suggested that the real writer was still at large. In fact, they continued, even taunting the prison warden, claiming the wrong person had been convicted. The letters were a constant reminder that the mystery was far from over. So if Paul Freshour was behind bars, who was still writing the letters? The question haunted investigators and residents alike, adding another layer of complexity to the case. Was Paul innocent, or was he orchestrating the letters from prison? The mystery only deepened. The possibility that Paul was innocent raised troubling questions about the justice system and the true identity of the letter writer. Over the years, several theories about the Circleville letters have emerged. Let's break them down. Each theory offers a different perspective on the case, but none provide a definitive answer. Many believe Paul Freshour was the mastermind. He had access to the booby trap materials and a motive, his strained relationship with Mary. The evidence against him was compelling but not conclusive. He had access to the booby trap materials and a motive, his strained relationship with Mary. The tension between Paul and Mary was well known, and it provided a possible motive for his actions. But the continuation of the letters during his imprisonment raises serious doubts. If Paul was the writer, how could he continue to send letters from behind bars? Others argue Paul was framed, possibly by someone with a vendetta against him or Mary. The possibility of a frame-up added a new layer of intrigue to the case. Could someone have planted the booby trap to incriminate him? The idea of a frame-up was plausible, given the complexity of the case and the number of people involved. There's also the theory that multiple people were involved. This would explain how the letters continued even after Paul's conviction. The idea of a conspiracy added another layer of complexity to the case. This would explain how the letters continued even after Paul's conviction. The possibility of multiple writers suggested a coordinated effort to terrorize the community. Was this a coordinated effort to terrorize Circleville? The idea of a conspiracy was both intriguing and terrifying, suggesting that the true scope of the mystery was far greater than anyone had imagined. Finally, some speculate the letters were a cruel prank that spiraled out of control. The idea of a prank gone wrong was plausible, but it didn't explain the level of detail and the personal nature of the letters. But if this was just a hoax, how did the writer know such intimate details about their victims? The level of knowledge suggested that the writer was someone close to the victims, someone who had access to their private lives. After Paul Freshour's release in 1994, the letters stopped, leaving behind decades of fear and unanswered questions. The sudden cessation of the letters added another layer of mystery to the case. To this day, the identity of the Circleville letter writer remains a mystery. The case remains one of the most baffling unsolved mysteries in American history. The letters left a lasting impact on Circleville, creating an atmosphere of paranoia and distrust. The community was forever changed by the events, and the scars of the mystery still linger.